Okay, welcome to another edition of Free Arkansas. I'm Andy McNeill, and I'm happy today to talk to Tyler Tarver, Dr. Tyler Tarver. Tyler, how are you doing?
Oh, so good, Andy. Thank you so much for having me, man. Super pumped to be here.
So, and Tyler has got this super interesting background, and it's very education focused, very AI, very, let's just say, technology focused. But he's an entrepreneur, an educator, an author, a whole lot of stuff. But before I get into that, I want to start with what I see behind you, which is a lot of different collectibles, And so I can't find it, but when I was doing research about you, I saw somewhere that you're a Harry podcast enthusiast. And so is that right?
I absolutely am obsessed with Harry Potter and the whole world. Like, I literally go to bed listening to the books in a headphone every night. Like, it's a problem, but I'm like, you know what? If I got one vice and it's Harry Potter, let's go.
Because I have a daughter who's a little bit younger than you, but like, oh my God, this child, I mean, she's a grown woman now, but like, still, when she comes to my house, like for Christmas, I'll come in and she'll like have a Harry Potter movie on. And I just think like, my God, you probably can quote this thing line for line for line, And so are you the same way?
Yeah. And that's the thing. By the way, kudos to your daughter, because Harry Potter, underrated Christmas movies. Okay. They've got great Christmas sequences in the HP films. It's fun. And one of my keynotes I do for teachers, I kind of I talk about being the guide versus the hero. And the example I use is in Harry Potter. And so I open with like, guys, legally, as a millennial, I have to bring up Harry Potter in every talk that I do. Because I think us millennials, like that was the defining story of our book series when we were growing up. And so it was perfect for us. And I think that's why we're all trying to do the right thing and defeat Voldemort.
It's like Harry Potter and Taylor Swift. It just,
that's exactly right. We've grown up with both of them.
So I like to collect things too, a little bit different. I actually like to collect books. And so I'm a book collector. But when I was younger, I was behind me a football card collector, and so I thought you might get a kick out of this. I have no idea what to do with these football cards, and I don't even know if you'll recognize these names. But I'm gonna turn around and just kind of like read it, because anybody knows in football, so these cards go back. I don't have super old ones in this particular. They go back into the 50s, So it's like Frank Gifford, who used to be a commentator, and it's Gino Marchetti and Y.A. Tittle, and
I've owned that top middle one on the right. I've owned that one. I've owned several of those. I've bought and sold some old football cards.
Joe Namath, Johnny Unitas,
a lot of potential. Those two,
Terry Bradshaw, Roger Staubach. Anyway, I've got all these ones over here, and I have no idea what to do with it. But anyway, so it looks like you're also passionate about similar things. And, but let me change gears. Tell me kind of your ESPN highlights, film up to like creating Tarver Academy.
Okay. Well, great. It's quick to get there. I mean, I graduated Arkansas Tech from my undergrad, and then I was like, well, I guess I need to get a job, and couldn't get the job as Indiana Jones, so I decided to be a high school math teacher. So did that for a while, and when I started doing that, I started making YouTube videos, and I did it out of necessity to teach my students. And I was teaching at an ALE, which means that you're having to teach multiple subjects during one class period. So I'll just record the geometry videos, they can watch it on here, so I don't have to upload them to a scrolly wheel iPod. Do you remember those? And I was uploading them a chapter at a time there. And I was like, it'd be easier to just throw it on this website called the YouTube. And so I was putting it up there, and over time, it just kind of steamrolled, and, geometry didn't change a lot, over the past 20 years. So people kept using those videos. And then I got into administration. I was a principal. And then I was at central office. I was like an assistant superintendent. I was director of curriculum instruction, did that. And then I was actually the dean of a college after that. So I always describe it as I had these two parallel lines of my career. And one is like that traditional teacher, director, not coach, principal, central office, dean. Like, it's like following that education pipeline. But then on the other side of it, I was always creating online and trying to add value, just like you add value in the classroom or to your teachers. I was like, why not share this with anybody that wants it on the internet? So I'm trying to add value there. And so that's kind of where my two lines. And then, obviously the internet turns out it wasn't a fad. And so that kind of took off. And so that's been able to like, those channels have helped me like, kind of spread the word of the value I can add to teachers and show my personality to see if it vibes with school districts. So now like my main income is, speaking at schools, doing trainings, keynotes, things like that for educators. And then also, I do brand deals with some dope companies that I love. And so pretty cool.
So you go to Arkansas Tech, then let's see, you go to Conway, you go to, then, and then you do a little bit at University of Arkansas, a little bit at ASU. And I think you got your doctorate at Harding. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. I always joke around and say I got a degree from every school in the state of Arkansas, except for the colleges that I worked for.
And when did you decide, okay, I'm no longer going to be a full-time administrator or teacher?
Well, so, I still get the chance. I'm still director of learning and development for a company here in Arkansas. And I love it and I love my team, but I get to work, like I get a flexible schedule where I can like work from home or I can work from a coffee shop. And it's like I guide those teams and do that job, but I can also work that around some of these like speaking engagements and brand deals and things like that. So it's like I quickly realized my personality is I don't like that structure. And I think what they call that is ADD. You know what I mean? Like I like to be able to bounce around and do projects and try to build different things and then adjust the schedule around whatever I feel like passionate about doing that day. And so it's just been a really cool opportunity. And I love it. It's really dope being flexible. And then also the really cool thing is I get to go to the restroom whenever I want, which wasn't something I got to do in public ed.
Well, I'm curious, being in all those positions, do you have a perspective of like what makes, and maybe it's changing too, like what makes a really good teacher?
I think the main thing in 2025 that makes a great educator and honestly a great leader in any industry, it's that you're making the people around you better. In the past, it was we really only had one way to move up in the work sphere, and that's show how great you are. You know what I mean? And then hopefully you get promoted. And I think as an educator, I think one of the best things you can do is flip the script, and instead of you being the person who has all the information and you're shouting it out at the kids, y'all better take notes. This is all good stuff. Now these little quadrilaterals in our pocket, these metal quadrilaterals, have access to all the information in the world. We can learn anything from YouTube or Google or ChatGPT at any moment. And so teaching students how to navigate that world and learn and grow and troubleshoot through that, as opposed to them just taking notes as you say it, is one of the best assets you can give your students in whatever profession they go in.
So, one of the things I thought was really, really impressive, and I want to tee this up just because I think it gives an insight of what you're trying to do as really, let's just say as an entrepreneur and a teacher. It's so from my perspective, when I look at what you're doing, what I would say is you've got a ton of followers on Instagram, 100,000 plus followers in Instagram, a lot of good. And I would say, humorous, lively, it's interesting to listen to, right? It's so, which I think is part of maybe the unlocking move to learning was to make it not dull for certain things. And then it also looks like it's tricks for teachers and students to accelerate their learning and I guess cut through red tape and get better outcomes. And you're doing this through your business and putting out books, videos, etc. So what I guess I would ask you is like, when you think about what you're trying to solve, like what the business solves for, am I close to that, or would you articulate what I'm solving for is a little bit different?
No, you're spot on. And that's my thing. Like whenever I create like videos, especially shorts, because you only have like a minute or so, one of the things I found is it's only two reasons any of us watch anything on the internet. And that's because it educates us or it entertains us.
Yeah.
And so if you can do one or both of those, help somebody learn something or guide them or give them a resource, or what I really try to do, because it's one of my things that I value my time.
Right.
And one of the things you never hear from a teacher is I got just so much time to do everything I want to do. You know what I mean? Like the better the teacher, the less time they feel like they have because the more they want to do. And so I always try, hey, this will save you 5 minutes a day. This will save you 30 minutes a week. This will save you an hour a week. If I can give them a resource or a tip or a tool that can help them either free up time or do the things they're doing better, I'm going to throw that out there every time. And I just love helping teachers.
So when you look at whether it's high school or college, but I know you're having more of a focus on K through 12. So let's just start there. What do you think are the biggest issues that relate to learning? And there's just the changes that we've got going on.
I mean, that's the thing. The world's sped up. pretty fast. It's past 5 or 6 years, since we all had to use the internet because of COVID, but then also with AI the past few years, like the world's sped up. And it's like we always want to prepare students for the world they're walking into, but we still have to meet those traditional needs of, hey, learn quadratic formula. Kids are like, what? Yeah, kids all the time ask me, when will I use this in real life? I said, the test. Like that's, most of them will never use quadratic formula again, but we have to learn it because it's a part of this whole structure. I think we, as the adults in the room, we need to figure out what is necessary to learn. And then what tools do we need to get them like adaptive learning? I think, a lot of times, the creative arts, video, speech, art, like those things were all kind of like take one elective for half a year and that's all you have to do. Like now that's one of the best skills a student can have going in the world is being able to tell a company's story in a 1-minute video, because every company needs to get attention. And the place we get attention now is through social media. And so like adding those skills for students is huge. And I think being able to do that in an engaging way and a relevant way for K-12 is really important. And honestly, and because I've been the dean of a college for a couple different schools here in Arkansas. It was like a branch campus essentially. I found that a lot of colleges, like whatever we think K-12 is, they're trying to engage students. They're trying to catch up. Like, yes, we're a little behind, but they're trying to catch up. College ain't even trying. And a lot of times, like they're just chilling. They're like, hey, what's up? We're going to keep doing what we're doing. Lecture, baby. You know what I mean? Like, we're going to do what we want. You're paying to be here.
Well, I want to go through some things that I would say, like, there are things that if we were to envision, let's maybe frame it this way. Let's say you and I were envisioning 20 years from now, and we were saying, look, we want in the state of Arkansas to have the best K through 12 system in the country. And let's say even outstanding colleges. Today we rank all these things, right? And it's hard to really tell exactly where things are relative to other people. And sometimes people want to look at lists and say why these lists are irrelevant, but they are sort of benchmarks that we can kind of look at. And Arkansas doesn't raise as high as we'd like to be rated. So here are some of the things that I think are sort of some issues. Like, and you can just tell me if you think these are issues, and then we'll tick through them. Like, okay, I think one of the things that's happened over the last, couple decades is the rise of screen time. I think that the time that people spend in front of screens has changed, and I think it changes how people, can take in information. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, for good and bad.
Yeah, for good and bad.
I think that we have options now. We don't have to watch the same 4 channels when we go home. We have options. Like, how many of us turn on Netflix, but we're on our phone the whole time looking at social media? Like, we do both. And while it does make us, I think, more distracted in certain things, it also, it's more engaging. They're for a reason. Like these companies, these that have apps are multi-billion-dollar apps for a reason. It keeps our attention, and that's all of them's goal is to keep us there as long as possible, so that we see more ads. But I think that it does impact our attention spans, and so I do agree there. But also, one thing that I want us to try to figure out as educators, and you tell me if you have any ideas on this, like whenever we have students go into a classroom and we say, all right, everybody, put everything away, all your devices away, 45 minutes, sit here and listen to me talk. And then you can't, you take a test, you can't look anything up, you can't ask a friend, you can't do. When in your daily life, since you got out of school, have you ever had a boss come into your office and go, hey, you have 45 minutes to do this. You can't use the internet. You can't call a friend. You can't use any of your prior resources or notes, and I will evaluate you at the end. Like, it doesn't happen. It doesn't look like the real world. I get that we're trying to learn certain things, but it's like, I wish we could step back and be like, how can we at least tailor this to look like the world they're walking into whenever they're in the workplace?
Well, let me give you some examples about how I like this happens for me. So the class that I teach, so I teach at the University of Arkansas, and I teach a class on private equity and entrepreneurship, just generally. That's what I would, at a high level. I have no restrictions on using any AI tools or any help of any kind. In fact, the way that I actually start the class is there's no such thing as cheating. Not in this class. You can do whatever you need to do in order to kind of move the puck forward, because that's what you're going to do in real life anyway. What I find really interesting, though, is that, oftentimes I can't get them to get through certain things, because maybe I'll say, okay, I want you to go read this chapter of this thing right here. And I'll be like, okay, did anybody actually read it? Or did you, what you did, went to a tool, downloaded the bullet points and just went through the bullet points. And then what we'll do is, what I find is that, they're all using AI tools, which I'm okay with, but the results that they'll get are very, very different. So there's almost this like learning of how to use the tools, right? Because you can get the wrong answer. And I also can tell, it's very easy to tell if there's not some of them in the material, because I'll tell them like, unlike a very specific math question, right, that has a right or wrong answer, I'm asking them to interpret something, and so
personal application.
yes,
That's the key to all this. How do you apply it to you? And yes, if you use, advanced models of Chat or Gemini, like you can have it adapt and it can learn. Like mine knows me at this point. Like I can have it write a blog post in my voice and style, and then I go in and edit its version of me. And then like we go back and forth. Like it's not a type it in and you're done. It's a skill set. And that's why I think if we can teach students to brainstorm and bounce back and forth and have it tutor, like they're going to walk into the workplace where all these other, I mean, to be honest, millennials and above, a lot of them in the workplace are copy pasters into ChatGPT. And if we can teach these young people to come in, sit in a boardroom, let it hear notes, discern what their goal is versus what the computer is suggesting, bounce back and forth, and then use their like knowledge of real world and online, it's going to be, it's going to make a lot bigger difference a lot faster. And the phrase that I tell educators all the time is I'm like, AI is not going to take your job. ChatGPT is not going to take your job as a teacher. Like there, some jobs it will replace, but for most jobs, it will not replace people. However, people who use AI will replace you because they're just going to be so much better than you. Like if you don't learn how to use these tools, you are going to look like the worst employee at your business.
This is more of a higher ed thing, but let me just frame it and I'll switch it back to what you're doing. If I were to say today, I'm going to construct the college education system in the state of Arkansas, okay? What would I deploy and how would it look and operate? I wouldn't do what exists today, which is, 22 two-year colleges and 11 four-year colleges, each with and I'm going to be a little bit glib here, with a Starbucks and a Chick-fil-A and just the infrastructure that we build out. And part of the reason I believe this is that I think these tools are radically going to change how we deliver information. And so I almost feel like what you're doing is like, you're sort of pulling people along about how things could look in the future, and so I'm just curious if you have a view like this. So when I was on the higher education board when COVID started, okay, and everybody went online, and what's so easy to see is like a video of somebody in front of a whiteboard, right? That's from a distance. No one's going to pay attention to that. It's not entertaining. It's not interesting. It's difficult to watch, like that's for anybody. And so like, I think the way that content has to be created is so much different. Would you agree with like that and how you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, that was literally what my dissertation was about, was what engages learners with online educational YouTube videos. Like that's what we studied. And what we found is kind of cool results. For watch time, likes, and comments, it was always a person with like a visual graphic or text. That's what kept people the longest. That's what made people hit the like button and made people join the conversation. The only one that was different with regards to that was whenever it was shared. Yeah. Because what we analyzed were a bunch of educational videos. What we found is when people want to give someone, here's the how-to on to do this, or here's how to do this, they didn't care if it had elements and it was engaging. They just said, this solves your problem. It's like they want to check it off their list by sending it to you, and they don't care if it's just a screen record or just a lecture. They were just like, here, take it, go. So screen record only actually did better in the shares because people were just like, here you go, get it done. And so it's like, we as the person presenting the information, we got to stop doing what's the easiest for me to deliver the information. It's what's the most engaging. And especially in video, that's very often more editing, which is more time, which is the worst. If you've ever edited, it's the worst part of the process. I used to shoot hard. A lot of weddings, and it's the worst part.
Well, I've taken some online college classes from certain universities, and like Hillsdale College up in Michigan. I don't know if you ever, and they do. The production value of what they do is outstanding. So as a listener, it's a little bit like watching a documentary. It's just, it pulls you in and it's interesting, like, especially if you've got some interest in the material, it's easy to engage with it. And let's say Arkansas things we'd like to improve on. So about 32,000 people graduate from Arkansas high schools every single year. and only about 13,000 of them then go enroll in colleges in Arkansas. Now, another smaller percent go out of state, but Arkansas's high school to to college is the numbers are in their 40s, like low 40s. The national averages are 60. I look in Arkansas and say we're in an arms race for jobs. In order for us to get these jobs in the future, we have to really educate people. If I go back to when you were in high school at Bauxite, and I don't know if it's Bauxite High School. I don't know if there's enough people in Bauxite. Is there a Bauxite High School? I don't even know.
Yeah, bro. B4A, baby.
Yeah. I can't remember what year it happened, but when Governor Huckabee ran the education reform, and he ran this because the guys at Stevens had come to him and said, "Hey, look, we're going to run someone against you if you don't really focus on education." He said, "No, I got it. I'll do this." And if you remember, what they wanted to do was consolidate a lot of the school districts in the state of Arkansas. And here's the logic: he would go around, and I thought this was rock solid logic. He'd said, last year Arkansas hired 10 teachers that had a math degree, 15 people that had a chemistry degree. And what's happening is only certain schoolers are getting those teachers. So what you're getting in certain subjects, he'd say, like, if you can throw a football, we got 1 million coaches for you, but if you're good at the tuba, if you're good at chemistry or math, we may not have a place exactly for you, and so by consolidating the schools, you had better access to programs. And at the time that made sense. But in today's world, Tyler, if you're the best math teacher, and you've got great ideas, we should be able to tap into that, right? Because, that's exciting. I know that, like at Russellville High School, there's certain teachers that everybody loves. They have better outcomes on scores, with their students. And we need to sort of bottle that, in some ways, isn't that what you're doing?
That's absolutely correct. And that's here. First off, I want to say this. You said, talked about consolidation. Whenever we applied for waivers to start a new school in our district, I was sitting there and we were next on the docket after they consolidated Wiener School District. And like the school was in there fighting for their school. It was a crazy intense day at the Department of Ed. But and we got passed. So anyways, so your thoughts on that? That's literally because whenever COVID hit, like everybody had to use internet, and it was good. I had like a ton of videos and resources and templates, and we had done a lot of like blended online flipped classrooms with that school that we got waivers for. And so I got the chance to advise and work with a ton of schools after that who were trying to adjust to this. And one of the things that worked for a lot of schools that I kind of pitched them was different, like, because every teacher was like, they're doing a 45-minute Zoom call, 45-minute Zoom call, 45-minute Zoom call, and then they get off the call and then they're having to grade papers, they're having to prep. They're like, it was so much time. And that's why so many teachers were stressed. And then they're following up with students that didn't show up. I told them, I said, you have different you got a third grade team. Okay, so you got 5 teachers on your third grade team. All right. There might be 1 or 2 who, they can edit videos, they're good on camera, they're engaging. Guess what? I said, have those 2 teachers. Their only job is to record the content.
Yeah.
That way students can watch the video. There were research studies done. It was at a college level, it was a medical class. They had 2 groups, 2 test groups. One group heard the teacher teaching live in a Zoom. The other group watched the pre-recorded video. There was no significant there was no significant difference in the learning between those 2 groups, watching it live versus watching it pre-recorded. Flipped classrooms.
Yeah.
The only time there was a significant difference in the learning was in the follow-up individually to answer their individual questions. So if that's the case, 2 teachers, y'all record, make the videos, y'all take turns, you'll deliver all the content and the students can watch it pre-recorded. The other 2 teachers, your job is to go in and then you tutor these kids one-on-one with little issues. They can bounce in, you answer their question, They can bounce out. You're there as like almost like office hours, and you can grade papers while you do it, and the other ones grade papers. And then you have one teacher, their only job is to call kids that didn't show up or haven't turned in work for a day or 2, call the parents and see where they're at. Like, split it out. Like you just talked about it, like you have access to the full internet.
Yeah.
We could literally go and find I think I'm a pretty good teacher. I can go on at any moment and find 1,000 people teaching it better than me on YouTube at any given time. Why not just show that video to deliver the content? And then I use the advantage I have, personal connection with the students, rapport, knowing their situation, connecting and building the bridge between their learning individually, and not have to use my time for 40 minutes to preach at them about what I'm trying to teach, let them watch that, and it's not new. It's a flipped classroom. That's what it is.
I think the whole game is going to change. I mean, because even small things like I play the guitar and I'm not very good, but I've been playing since I was a teenager. And so, but I'll use videos all the time. I'll just go watch. And what's amazing to me is I'll pick a song and there'll be 50. There's probably 50 people that have put out their version of playing it, all slightly different. And then I can pick them apart. I mean, so the learning is so much fun that way, and so, and
also, sorry, go ahead.
And it's accelerated.
It is. It's going so much faster. And honestly, we're getting to the point now where, because there was another study done where people would, like, students that watched videos of people teaching them that looked different than them, in the 90-something percentile, it developed these symptoms of empathy and understanding for other cultures, other races. Like, it has so many positives that comes with watching a video of someone. Like, I look like a generic white dude. I can't change that. That's what I look like. So when I stood in front of my class, other generic looking white dudes thought in the back subconsciously were like, I can do this because someone that looks like me did it. When the kids that look different than me now have to try to, like, battle through that to learn it as well. Why not just bring in those videos? We're going to get to the point with AI where if I have a student, they want to learn something, they could literally take a picture of themselves, talk for 10 seconds, and then a video of them that looks like them is going to teach them the thing they want to learn. Like, can you imagine like the mind game of, I don't know if I can learn this, but I'm actually teaching me this at the same time. It's crazy what we're going to be at.
That's actually an interesting perspective, being taught by yourself.
Yeah. Well, it makes you think, I've done it. I've already done it. It's like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for cutting you off. It's like, spoiler alert, the third Harry Potter, Prisoner of Azkaban. Why, at the very end, could Harry do that huge expecto patronum? Because he'd already seen himself in the future doing it. It's a loop. We could say Harry Potter. It always comes back to Harry Potter, baby.
That all comes back. Well, there's lessons learned everywhere, right?
Everywhere.
So for your teaching, I noticed that you've got basically, here's how you can use the tools a little bit better. What do you think are the things that are the tools that, like, most teachers really need to know today? What would you say, like, here's the alphabet soup of, like, you got to be good at these 4 or 5 things?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. So what I always recommend to teachers is there's a ton of, like, little teacher specific AI things. Honestly, get good at ChatGPT and or Gemini. Those are kind of like your baseline. That's bench press and sprints. You know what I mean? Like, be good at those first, and then you can take that knowledge and that skill set of being able to be a prompt engineer, and you can do anything you want from it. Now, if I'm being specific, 2 that I always recommend are Brisk. Have you ever heard of Brisk? It's a Chrome extension. It's beautiful. I love Brisk very much. It is super easy for teachers. It's a little bee that'll, after you download the Chrome extension for free, it's a little bee. Any website you go to, you click on it, and you can build lesson plans that are grade specific and time specific. You can build Google slide presentations, Google form quizzes, like all the stuff that used to be like a time suck on teachers. Now it's click, I got it. And then I just go in, and I always tell teachers, when it generates that stuff, that's your first draft, not your final draft. And so don't just go with it. You go, it's back and forth. It's a collab. The second one and the other one, so Brisk Chrome extension is one. The second one is Notebook LM. Have you heard of Notebook LM?
Nope.
So it's through Google. So notebooklm.google.com. It's like, when you type a prompt into chat or Gemini, it just goes out to the internet, finds it, and brings it back. With Notebook LM, you can control the sources it pulls from. So it's very, very good academically. So like, you're teaching your students. Let's say you wanted to use Donald Miller's Story Brand book. You want to use, John Maxwell's leadership book, one of his that I've 5 levels of leadership, and you want to Simon Sinek, Leaders Eat Last. You could go in and grab a 2-hour YouTube video of Simon Sinek talking, link to that. You could link to John Maxwell's PDF of his book, and then you could link to Donald Miller's website. You could link all 3 of those in Notebook LM. And then when students type any chat or any prompt in there, hey, give me 3 ideas on how to apply this to someone who wants to open up a dog grooming business in Northwest Arkansas, tailored to college kids who have puppies. You know what I mean? Like, as specific as they want. It's, instead of going out to the internet, with Notebook LM, it'll pull from those sources and build the answer. And then you can even click and it cites where it got it from, that YouTube video or from that book or from wherever it was. It cites where it got the information and then it builds it. So it's like, as an academic, it controls what your students are going out to get info from, because I don't know if you know this, some of the internet's a little boo-boo and it's not all legit, you know? And so guiding them is super helpful.
So let me see if I can regurgitate what you just said. So you can say, hey, look, students, I've got this AI prompt. Here it is. And that AI prompt is going to, instead of going out to the big wide world, it's going to go to this more narrow spectrum of things that you're really trying to get them to target to you. You're saying,
Correct.
hey, look, the answers sort of lie within these dozen books or videos or whatever it is. So your questions will go to there and bounce back that way. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
Yep. It runs it. That's the top of filter now. Whatever website, doc, slide, PDF, you know, whatever it is, YouTube video, whatever it is you want, you think is legit, it'll pull through there. And so it gives the teachers more control on what it's pulling their stuff from. And
Interesting.
Like I have my kid. So my oldest, he's real smart, super smart, like made a 32 on his ACT as an 8th grader. Like he's super good. And like, he's already smarter than me. So he's in 9th grade now. And he's like, can you help tutor me on science? And science was not my jam.
Yeah.
I did okay at it, but it wasn't my favorite. I was just like, dude, let's take every presentation your teacher gave you, all your Google slide presentations, all your docs, everything you did from that semester. I'm going to dump those into Notebook LM. I'm going to make you a notebook. And then you can literally say, hey, I'm trying to study for the test. Please ask me one question at a time. Everything I get right, tell me good job and be encouraging, and then ask me a new question that builds and scaffolds off that. For anything I get wrong, I'm into the American TV show, The Office. Please relate what I was trying to learn to people and characters and situations from The Office, so it helps me learn about what I'm trying to learn for American history. Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's amazing how the prompts are going to change. I noticed that, like, for example, I signed some books, and these are books I've already read. And, you know, I would know, like, okay, we assigned chapter 10 last week, and I'd want to like refresh myself on it. And I would go out to ChatGPT to go like, hey, pull down the notes for chapter 10 for such and such book. And I would give the book and it would pull these notes. And of course, because I've read the book, I know what it's giving me is wrong, you know? And so I'll have to go like, no, not that book. And then it'll say like, oh, sorry, you know, but it all really probably comes down to me being very quick with like the simplest prompt ever, you know, versus a very long prompt that's catered. So I do think that these prompts are going to be really interesting. And like, you almost need a class on how do I use an AI prompt? Because like what you just said is super interesting, right? Like, cause I can create, like, how do I accelerate my 9th grader to love learning? Well, I just sort of like, you know, he likes The Office or he likes Harry Potter or whatever he likes, you know, like I'm going to just intertwine all this stuff and drive the boat forward.
Yeah, man. And that's one of my favorite prompts to use related to something they're interested in. Because when I talk to teachers, I usually start one of my keynotes with like, what is the biggest issues or problems you run into? And one they always say is student engagement. Like, how do I get students to care? You know? And I don't know if you know this, there was some research studies. Sorry, I keep referencing research studies. It's just to remind people that I have a doctorate. It was very expensive, so I'm just trying to get my money's worth.
Yes, there's always a study.
There's always a study. And there was a peer-reviewed research study that analyzed why people stop watching a YouTube video. Why does somebody stop watching something online? You tell me if this resonates with you. There were a lot of reasons, but the two that were like the LeBron and MJ of the reasoning were because, one, they're confused about what's going on. So they click it and they're like, I don't know what's happening. You ever started a movie and you're like, I don't know what's going on. I'm going to try something.
Yeah,
new.
I do.
You're confused about what's happening, or you don't see how it applies to you. You start watching it, you're like, this is not something I care about or need to know. I'm good. Those are the main two reasons people stop watching. And so if we can use these tools to, if it's too confusing, hey, simplify this. Like Michael Scott from The Office, explain it to me like I'm a 5-year-old. Like, like simplify it for me. Or B, say, hey, I don't understand why I need to learn about Pythagorean theorem. I want to be a truck driver when I grow up.
Right.
Why is this important? And how can this relate to what I want to do as a profession? And then, you know, it's going to be like, hey, if you're ever driving through the hills of Colorado, you need to understand this level. You know, it's going to relate it to them and what they care about. Even if it's a little convoluted, it'll find a way. You know what I mean? Even has to make a little bit up.
I'm going to switch gears just a little bit, you know, from just an entrepreneur perspective. So you run a business. Tell me how you think about building this business and and how you go about doing that?
That's great. Because a lot of mine is online, I use essentially a filter. I consider it like an upside down pyramid. And so at the top of filter, it is how do I add people value? And that's all brand. Like how do people essentially when they hear your voice or see your face, they connect it with another time they heard your voice or saw your face. All right, and so that's through social media posts. TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Pinterest. Like these are all free places that everybody is. Okay. Organic growth. So that's my top of filter. Now, ideally, somebody goes from there to the next part of my little upside down pyramid. And that is they jump into my email list or they hit the follow button. So if they follow or they go to my email list, because, email lists are huge because algorithms change. But an email list is forever. You know what I mean? Like that's where I want. So I give a ton of free templates and resources for teachers, and to get them for free, which it saves them a couple $1,000s on templates. They get it for free by giving an email address. And so I get their email. After that, then I get into my one-off things for like funding my life. It's, book sales, speaking engagements, brand deals with companies. Like these are all, most of the time you get paid once. And like, if I go speak at a school, they pay me to come speak. They don't just keep paying me every month after that because they thought I did such a good job. You know what I mean? Like it's a one-off payment. And then the bottom where I would love everybody to be is my membership area. So it's like you've heard of people subscribe to my Patreon.
Right.
I have I call it the honor roll membership, and it's just like $30 a year. Teachers, schools can sign up their whole teacher staff, and it's got 200 hours worth of professional development. Because in Arkansas, every teacher has to get I think the minimum's 36, but most of them have to get 60 hours a year in the summer of training. I have all that training. A school can spend a fraction of that a year, subscribe, and then all their teachers can get their trainings at any time they want through the summer.
So when you think about how you keep the content fresh, how do you do that? And also, like, what are the next? Because I know you've written a number of books. I know your last book is the Baller Teacher Playbook, and I don't know how new that is, but I'm curious, like that, the book and what you're sort of working on next, in addition to like the day-to-day thing, with the content.
That's a hard thing because I call content quicksand. You make a video, throw it out there, and you're just like, I hope it sticks. And if not, it just sinks, or it maybe has a little bit longer lifespan. But that's hard because it's every day you got to feed the content monster. But then in the background, I'm working on another book right now. I build out courses, that goes into that honor roll. So it's like you're building all those things, and then, you're doing longer form content, podcasts, and, long form video, and YouTube. There's so much. And it's just pretty, like I'm a very small team. And so it's like trying to do that it's a lot, but it's just time management,
Yeah. Well, and I assume you're having fun too, right?
I love it. Like if I don't like something, and that's the thing I started making, I started getting into sports cards a few years ago. And so, of course, because of social media, I was like, well, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to make a social media account, try to build a community and have a conversation with people about it, share what I'm doing. Because my family don't care about my new Jordan Poole rookie card. They don't care about my new Jordan Poole rookie card or my, Steph Curry autograph. They don't care.
Yeah.
They don't care. So I talk to people on the internet who might care. And that has essentially grown into its own thing. Because I always say, like, all my hobbies become businesses. And so now, like, I do collabs with companies. I get to go to shows, like stuff like that, building off of that. Which really all that money just goes to buying more cards. It's not helping pay for anything in my life.
It's amazing how that little niche of trading things. So I don't know the names of all the websites, but I have a friend of mine who, if you looked at him, you would never think he's doing this, but he's like buying like tennis shoes and women's purses and things like this. And so he's basically he's like wheeling and dealing. And there's all these websites. He literally spends hours watching these auctions happen.
Oh yeah, probably Whatnot or eBay Live, something like that.
I find it, very, very interesting. I'm curious, when I looked at different rankings, and one of the things I thought was interesting was this Instagram ranking where you are the 18th influencer, in the education space on Instagram. I'm assuming you've seen this. But they do it all by followers, which I thought was interesting. You've got 100,000 plus followers. The number one person has 3.6 million followers. So I got this list from FeedSpot that was showing, and so
I'm gonna go look at it. I know it's on a list. Let's go. 18. Let's go. I'll take 18 all day.
Yeah, you're number 18. A girl named Deanna Jump is 17. Kylie Cohen is, next, and it just goes up, and like, it's all teachers in various ways. I thought you might know who these people were, so I thought, well,
no, so I do know. I'll be honest, because I get the chance to like travel and speak at schools and conferences and stuff like that, and like every now and then, like you go in, and it's funny because education is such a traditional space. It's like used to you would get your speakers and your people because they wrote a book. Oh, you're published a book that or you're an author or whatever, and that's how you got validity in the space. And then it was people with doctorates and they got their validity, or people that worked in central office or, whatever. Then I noticed about 10, 12 years ago, it was like kind of the Twitter vibe. There was like a Twitter group of educators that people would go and they would be like, oh, you're good on Twitter. And then you've got your book, you've hit those check marks. And now I'm like literally just this past year was the first time I ever spoke at a conference and another speaker there had more social media people than me. And I think it's now starting to get to oh, you're the teacher on TikTok and you're the teacher that on Instagram. Like it's starting to move, and it's like our schools are so far behind everybody else because, business have been bringing in social media people for years. Oh, it's this TikToker or creator or influencer. But now schools are starting to look. It was actually in Indiana, and his name, he's great. He's phenomenal. It's Philip Lindsay.
Okay.
And he does a lot of his content. He's advising people on the Gen Alpha slang terms, like here's what kids are saying. Then he talks about 6-7 and all this other stuff. And so he does that, and he was speaking at it, and it's like he's getting into the speaking world, but like it's weird because it's not like a lot of the traditional people that are speaking to these conferences, they're not out there filming on their phone doing a 1-minute video. You know what I mean? Like they feel like it's almost like beneath them to post on social. But then now we're getting people that get to book these speakers that are millennials. Even, Gen Z is starting to get into administration. Like, and they're not going to Twitter. They're going to Instagram and TikTok. It's a blessing and a curse, in my opinion. Like, I feel like I'm always about 5 to 10 years too early. You know what I mean? Like, I got on YouTube about 10 years before people started paying people to be on YouTube. And then I got on social media, and now I'm like a little early. So I'm going to be old, and I'm going to be on something that nobody's using.
Well, one of the things I like about kind of the way that I interpret it is that if I run into someone like yourself and you've got all these different followers and you're putting out all this content, then you're working really hard on staying relevant. So you got to stay up with tools and all the gizmos and gadgets of the trade. And so you become a good resource for that, right? For example, somebody like me, who's I'm just passionate about teaching this one subject, right? And I'm not any sort of help around the edges is a big help to me, right? And sometimes I don't necessarily need the help on on the exact content. I know what I'm talking about. Just like somebody may know, hey, I understand geometry, right? But there's better ways to do it, right? I know that. And there's ways that are more interesting, and there's stories you can tell, and there's other things you can relate to in videos. And so, I don't have access, I don't know all of that. So I look at somebody like yourself and I say, well, this is how it could be the unlocking move, this interconnectivity, between the whole. So here's my last thing. I'm curious, like, what's like the main thing that teachers ask you about, or that you want to tell teachers about?
I mean, right now, a lot of them are asking about, first thing they ask is, how do I know if my kids are cheating using AI? Because they're all scared they're cheating in AI. And, the advice I always give them is like, yeah, there's websites and stuff, but as soon as a website gets good at detecting AI, another website gets better at getting around it. It's this constant battle. And I tell them, I'm like, look, you get so upset about it, but guess what? Cheating did not get invented with ChatGPT 3 years ago. Like cheating's been around since people had Next and they could reach around their neighbor and look at their paper. You know what I mean? Like we didn't get rid of Next after that, And so whenever I talk to them, I'm like, look, here's the deal. Like it's a back and forth of this. Hey, this tool's great, but also communicating to students, here's why we're using it, or here's why we're not using it. And then if you think a student used it, guess what? The easiest way to catch them is say, hey, I've got your paper here. Did you use ChatGPT or another AI? No. Okay. Tell me about your paper. Yes. And if they can't verbally tell you anything, spoiler alert, they probably cheated. You know what I mean? Like, and then what I tell them is take them in there, give them the exact same assignment and say, here's a blank piece of paper, write it on hand. And then some teachers are like, well, then why don't we do every test by hand and use trapper keepers again, blah, blah. First off, trapper keepers are dope. I respect the game.
Yes.
Okay. But number two, that's a ton more work for teachers instead of them typing it in and having something help you. And so one of the big things I get asked is why are students cheating? And then the other one, and they're always scared of, is like, is this going to replace teachers? And like I told you earlier, like, it's not going to replace teachers. Teachers that use it will replace other teachers. But I told them, I said, anybody who's ever sat, because I post a lot of videos, and every now and then it's usually on Facebook, it jumps on the algorithm train and gets out into the non-educator community. All right. And what I like to call, they leave comments of what I like to call the devil's whisper. And that's what they be saying. And so they're like, oh, this is going to take you're talking about a tool that's going to take teachers' jobs.
Yeah.
And I'm like, here's the deal. Anyone who ever stood in front of a class of students knows that you can't say, here's what I want you to learn. Here's ChatGPT. Good luck.
Yeah.
Because we all know what's going to happen. You know what's going to happen. They're going to watch Drake music videos every day in class. Right. And then 2 days before it's due, they're going to copy paste it into ChatGPT and put the answers and cheat. Teachers' role is not diminishing. It's moving towards what we got into teaching to do. Like most teachers aren't like, I want to become a teacher because I want to show kids how smart I am and how much I know about American history. That's not why we got into education. Almost all of us got into education to help young people improve, get better, and be better, and move them towards what they want to do and what they're passionate about. Guess what? With all this technology, now the time it took you to just talk at them, they can now learn either through a back and forth on AI or watching a YouTube video. And then you get to walk around the class, connect with students, build rapport, connect those bridges of their learning, like help them move towards and make it relevant to what they care about. That's the skill we get to do. And I think teachers are going to move further away from the sage on the stage to the mentor right next to the student, running the race with them. And I think that's why most of us got into it. And so I try to reassure teachers, like, the job's moving towards what you want, not away from what you care about.
Well said. Well said.
Thanks, man.
I'm going to leave it there. Hey, listen, I appreciate everything that you do. I loved the energy, and I was so happy to find you out there in the world. So best of luck for your business. And, I hope you have a Merry Christmas.
Hey, Andy, thank you so much for having me. It was an honor to be on here. And I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me and have me scream at you through a screen. I'm so sorry.
Maybe one day we'll get to meet in person.
I would love that, bro.